The Climate Change and Other Criminal Hoaxes. By Anna von Reitz. Information provided to H.E. Cardinal Mamberti and the Vatican Chancery Court in regard to our claims, March 5, 2005, January 19, 2023, in Seek. Given the history and behavior of the two municipal corporation subcontractors housed in the District of Columbia, we should not be surprised that these same organizations, like the Nazi Eugenicists, have wrapped political agendas and personal prejudices up in pseudo-science and fed it to the public. It is well known to geologists in general and to volcanologists in particular, that a single large volcano belching gases during an eruption is able to release more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than the entire human race has contributed during the entire course of its existence. With over 200 active volcanoes, on average, spewing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every day of every year, it is a no-brainer to come to the correct and truly scientific conclusion. Carbon dioxide emissions contributed by people and their puny activities are totally insignificant. Furthermore, if the volcanoes want to belch carbon dioxide, there isn't anything we can do about it. There is absolutely no sane reason for the green agenda, no reason for cow diapers, and more to the point, no reason for carbon taxes, either. Yes, this is another self-evident attempt on the part of these same guilty municipal corporations to come up with a rationale to pick our pockets on a global basis, nothing more or less. It's also an attempt to justify and create more coercive regulatory powers and authorities for themselves, authorities which do not exist and cannot be allowed to exist, in view of their track record. So much for the green agenda. It's not about green grass. It's about green paper. The perpetrators continue to think and talk and act as if this is not completely obvious to everyone else, which calls their competence, scientific and otherwise, into question. The recent genocide via phony vaccination is another pseudo-science hoax based on the idea that the Earth is overpopulated and unable to sustain life if the Homo sapien population is not reduced. Once again, we find different forms of insurance fraud at work. Self-interested municipal corporations collecting death benefits and annuities and insurance policies that are all based on phony public interest claims and crimes of personage. We have obtained plenty of credible evidence that in the past, the Earth supported much larger populations than we currently have, and that information has been available to the Holy See, too, throughout this criminal rampage. The motivation for the genocide appears to be multiplicit: to garner the insurance payoffs, to unlawfully and secretly convert human beings into genetically modified organisms, GMOs, that can be owned as products by the patent holders of the mRNA scrap now polluting the human genome, an assertion of new unauthorized regulatory powers for the perpetrators and WHO, INC, none of whom should be trusted to do anything, least of all, allowed to dictate medical practices. We are not cattle. We do not need any assistance in this area of our existence and do not grant any government or agency any authority to say one word about our health, public or private. Not even our states of the Union have any authority to horn in on that private arena, so no for-hire subcontractor does either. It should not be our responsibility to constantly respond to offers made by our subcontractors to increase their services and expand their own powers at our expense. If we wanted their services in these areas, we would have said so and we would have made provisions for it in our written contracts. The fact that we did not allow our federal subcontractors to interfere in our private lives should be more than a clue for them to mind their limits, which are also set and present in the written contracts. Most particularly, the Municipal Corporation Subcontractors, which are self-interested commercial corporations in the business of providing government services, have no excuse for attempting to force sell their services nor any reason to assume regulatory powers related to health or medicine. The municipal subcontractors have regulatory power over three things: alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. The only other thing they control, somewhat, is interstate commerce, and the intent of that empowerment is to encourage the free flow of trade and commercial activity across state borders, not to impose restrictions upon it and not to interfere with any private activity of living people. The idea of public health is a relatively recent concept originating in the 19th century, mostly arising in the Third World and urban slums, and as a result of cholera and typhus and various other kinds of epidemics that the people and their lawful governments fought cooperatively and successfully. The reality of worldwide epidemics is nothing new and does not justify the assumption of any new regulatory powers for governments, least of all, any new empowerments for the municipal corporation subcontractors and their agencies, which are already operating in breach of trust and service contract. A consortium of self-interested municipal corporation subcontractors, including DoD, INC, and the infamous Gates Foundation, and all the handmaiden franchises owned and operated by the DoD, INC, NIH, CDC, FDA, DOJ, FBI, etc. plus other collaborators of the same kind, the UN, WHO, etc., saw an opportunity to employ their stockpile of already outlawed biological weapons for their commercial and regulatory enhancement, and personal financial gain. That is all that underlies the purported pandemic: reckless commercial self-interest illegally and unlawfully and immorally imposed on entire countries and billions of people under color of law, and all via pretended authority. Not a single new proven to exist infectious disease has ever been in sight, but a gene therapy, and illegal RF tracking and monitoring, nanotechnology and experimental pathogens disguised and all misnamed and misrepresented as a vaccination, that is in plain sight. So is the preparatory legislation passed in the late 1980s by the Territorial Congress holding their own pharmaceutical corporation franchises harmless and free from liability for anything they might put in a vaccine and for any damage caused by these vaccine products. This legislation demonstrates premeditation of the crime on the part of the members of the Territorial Congress acting as the board of directors for the British Crown-operated Municipal Corporation Subcontractor. The spectacle of these unaccountable commercial corporation officials pretending to be members of our government holding their own franchises not liable for crimes and omissions should be enough proof that things have gone too far. Will they wave their hands and hold themselves unaccountable for murder, maiming, and dereliction of duty too? Reckless endangerment? Fraud? We heard the words, safe and effective, repeated so many times on our abused public airwaves, and yet none of these worthless public employees ever stated what their new product was safe and effective for. It was very early proven not to prevent infection or the transfer of infection, the traditional and only purpose of a vaccine. We find it to be safe for them, because they could maim and kill with the point of a needle instead of a gun. We find it effective, in that they have succeeded in murdering 250,000 Americans and only God knows how many other people worldwide, per month, and maiming and disabling probably 10 times as many people, and these effects will continue on indefinitely into the future, earning big profits for their medical sector franchises, to say nothing of the billions of dollars in immediate sales and profits and ever other possible permutation of fraud and self-interest, up to, including but not limited to, the sale of pandemic bonds. We have seen it all before. We have no need to see more. It was also effective for polluting the human genome and providing the perpetrators the opportunity to take advantage of pre-planned Supreme Court decisions allowing them to claim that their victims were redefined as genetically modified organisms, and made subject to ownership claims by the patent holders having an interest in the artificially engineered mRNA that the victims accepted under conditions of deceit, non-disclosure, and color of law. We interpret the situation quite differently. These organizations and individuals have polluted the genome of mankind and tried to override our Creator's ownership. They are criminals of the highest order in all jurisdictions, air, land, and sea. We find these municipal corporations to be operating in an absolutely criminal and unlawful fashion, in breach of trust and service contract. We wish for their total forfeiture, the arrest and punishment of their corporate officers, and the return of all unjust enrichment, all corporate profits and assets, for the benefit of the victims of their crimes. We wish for the immediate payment of $234,000 trillion in gold to our accounts in the Global Family International Trade Bank which we chartered for this purpose. This amount is due and owing for the destruction of nearly 250,000 American lives from December 2022 to January 2023. This amount was due and owing as of March 6, 2023, and the perpetrators have received public notices. If they cannot pay for their crimes, their corporations, including but not limited to their artificial persons, stand condemned, forfeit and foreclosed in the jurisdiction of the sea. We wish for the immediate recognition of their crimes on the land and against the law of the land and against the American people, their employers, and as a result of their crimes against mankind and against their employers, they stand condemned, forfeit and foreclosed in the jurisdiction of the land. We wish for the immediate recognition of their crimes in the jurisdiction of the air, Their multiple violations of eternal, universal, natural, ecclesiastical and canon law, their attempts to ruin creation with their self-serving commercial profit schemes and their ignorant meddling against nature, their misrepresentations against science and reason, their attempts to legalize and self-permit their unlawful actions, their lies, their premeditated crimes against God and man, for which they stand condemned, forfeit and foreclosed in the jurisdiction of the air. We have not directed, requested, required, desired, nor intended any of the actions that these criminal municipal corporations, their boards of directors, their presidents, their franchises, their agencies or their courts have taken. They have not represented their employers, the American people, and have not acted under our direction. They have represented and taken their orders from other principals, while deceitfully pretending to serve us in good faith. We wish for the entire world to know this and take action accordingly. We wish for the entire world to know that this same situation, and this same fraud scheme to undermine the national governments using territorial mercenary forces to illegally and deceitfully occupy friendly nations, has been applied by these same colluding municipal corporations throughout the world. Issued by Anna Maria Riesinger, Fiduciary. The United States of America in care of Box 520994 Big Lake, Alaska 99652. April 19, 2023.